Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are back talking college hoops, and we're going to be talking about the Thursday, February 20th slate of college basketball DFS on DraftKings as well as FanDuel, as well as talk a little bit about bets and player props as well for this three-game Thursday night slate. We're back after quite a lengthy hiatus when it comes to college basketball because last week after the Super Bowl, I got super sick right at halftime of the Super Bowl. And no, it wasn't because I had a lot of bets on the Kansas City Chiefs. I actually had a really profitable Super Bowl because I had a lot of anytime touchdown bets. And there were a lot of touchdowns. But anyway, I got really sick right in the middle of the Super Bowl. And it just totally knocked me out of commission for a week. And so I was kind of out all last week. This week, I sat down on Sunday night to record for the Monday college basketball slate. And I did. I recorded a full episode. And then my mic was on mute. And so there was no audio for it. Don't worry, I have double checked this episode. My mic is not on mute, as you can hear by, the actual content on this video. So this is our first full college basketball episode in about a week or two, and I'm really stoked. I actually think this is a really solid three-game slate that DraftKings has given us, and we're going to break down all three games, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who should be in or out of your DFS lineups for each of the three games. Now, as a reminder, make sure you're subscribed to the channel on YouTube as well as the audio feed. That way you can be with us for the rest of all of our content for the rest of college basketball season, all the way through the NCAA tournament till its end in April. But like I said, this is a good three-game slate. It's three games with totals over 140 points. It's six teams that like to kind of get up and down. Some of them, defense is optional and they opt not to play it. So there's going to be a lot of DraftKings scoring in this one. And I think there's a lot of possibilities with lineup construction on this one because there's a lot of teams with very ambiguous plays with either or options. And so we're going to talk about those either or options, and we're going to tell you where we are leaning on those options. So let's go ahead and dive in and start with game number one. All right. So game number one is the lowest total of the three games. It is a battle in the Big Ten, the traditional Big Ten, between Northwestern and Ohio State, with Northwestern traveling to Columbus to take on the Buckeyes. KenPom has this game as being projected to be 75-67 in favor of the Buckeyes. And I got to say, I don't think that is totally accounting for the status of this Northwestern team. More on that in a second. But that's a game total of 142 points, which on a 10-game slate would probably rank middle of the pack. But on this one is significantly lower than the other two games. So this is by and away game total number 3, right? And the reason why is because Northwestern does not like to get up and down. They rank 313th in the nation in tempo, and they're a pretty solid defensive team, ranking 63rd. Whereas Ohio State is 181st in tempo and 32nd in defensive efficiency. So you have two of the top two of the top 3 defenses on the slate in this game, and 2 of the slowest tempos on the slate in this game. And in fact, it is the 2 slowest tempos on the slate. So this is just generally not the game that you're going to want to be targeting with stacks and the like, right? Now, in terms of the statistical breakdown that I've looked at, Northwestern is not a good shooting team at all, and they do give up a ton of assists. They force teams to make the extra pass. Ohio State, on the other hand, is a good shooting team, but they do foul a lot. A lot of times their guys can get in foul trouble. So how can that play into DraftKings? Well, with Northwestern, we got to start off with the injury situation that they are in. So they are currently playing without, in my opinion, their 2 best players in Brooks Barnhizer and Jalen Leach. And they've been playing without them for the last 3 games. So what you've seen in the last 3 games has been just a total switch up on their rotation, total switch up on their usage rates. And it's really worth looking into. I think 3 games is a big enough sample size that we can start to identify some patterns, right? So the biggest thing that happened when both those guards went down is that we have seen a ton of shots taken by Nick Martinelli at the forward position, and he has just become a super volume shooter. In each of the last 3 games, he's taken at least 18 shots. From a DraftKings scoring perspective, he's gone 43, 27, 43. So 2 out of 3 games have been 4x value, which is what we want. He hasn't had a massive ceiling game yet, but the volume of shots is there. Ohio State is a team that we have targeted forwards against over the course of the season because they're not super big down low and they are prone to fouling. So I do think that this is a pretty good spot for Martinelli. So even as bad as this game environment is, he's a guy that I'm going to be getting into my player pool because he is guaranteed such a high volume of shots with the situation that they're in. Now, the rest of the forwards for Northwestern, Matthew Nicholson does start at the center position. He's actually played slightly above his average in minutes recently, but he really is a big cardio guy. He does not take a lot of shots. He's very dependent on rebounds. But with Ohio State being soft down low, this could be a spot where at $4,500, I could see myself taking some chances on him as a value play because I don't think he's going to be very popular. I think there's going to be a lot of other popular value plays, and he's not going to be one of them. And then they will play Keenan Fitzmaurice at the forward position, but he doesn't play enough to really be a factor on DraftKings. Now, at the guard spot, with Barnhizer and Leach out, it has just created like a vacuum for minutes and usage, right? The first thing that happened was Jordan Clayton was a guy that they were going to redshirt this year. And after those injuries, he has started the last 3 games. His usage rate in the first 2 games against Washington and Oregon were actually pretty good. They were both above 20%, 18 DraftKings points against Washington. Oregon played 14 minutes because he was in foul trouble, 6 DraftKings points. The Nebraska game, the most recent one, he was in the starting lineup, saw his usage rates decline drastically, though only 5 DraftKings points in that game. Look, I'm willing to go back to him just because they're going to have him in the starting lineup, and they have shown that when he is playing well, like he was against Washington, they will stick with him, and $3,600 is a super cheap way to do that. Now, the most obvious beneficiary of those 2 injuries is Ty Berry. He's like the easiest like to predict, chalkiest beneficiary of those 2 injuries, right? Since those injuries have happened, he's played over 34 minutes in every game. He's taken double-digit shots in every game, and his DraftKings scoring has gone 22, 27, 30. So at a salary of $6,000, he's given you 1 5x value game and 2 4x value games. So he is like the easiest, like most straightforward on paper play among these Northwestern guards. If you play cash games, I think he's a great option in DFS. I think he's a supremely high floor option because of the shot volume that he's going to get in the minutes that he's going to play. And so $6,000 is a pretty reasonable price tag to pay for him, in my opinion. But if you're looking to really capitalize in this situation, I still like going with Jordan Clayton. Now, the other 2 guys that have played a little bit more with those injuries, one's been Justin Mullins, but he plays with a supremely low usage rate. He's really a big cardio guy, hasn't taken more than 6 shots in either of the last 3 games, but he has played 33 minutes or more in those 3 games, and he's gone 15, 14, and 21 DraftKings points in those 3 games. So at a salary of $4,300, I can see getting to him as a value play because you know the minutes are going to be there, but I would rather play a guy that's actually going to shoot the ball. And then speaking of which, one of those guys could, keyword could, I'm not saying is going to be, I'm not saying this is a lock or anything, could be KJ Wyndham. In the Oregon game, he randomly out of nowhere played 28 minutes, put up 30 DraftKings points. But in the other 2 games since the injury, he's played 19 and 14 minutes and put up a combined 11 DraftKings points in those 2 games. So to recap the guard situation, with Barnhizer and Leach out, Ty Berry is going to play a ton. He's going to get double-digit shots. He's a very safe play. Jordan Clayton has been moved into the starting lineup. This is a guy they're excited about. To me, he has a ton of upside. Wyndham is your high floor, low ceiling cardio king. And I'm sorry, Mullins is your high floor, low ceiling cardio king. And Wyndham is like your high risk, high reward guy. So there you have it. That's the Northwestern backcourt as it currently stands. Let's flip over and talk about Ohio State. So with Northwestern, they give up a ton of assists, and they've really given up a ton to guards over the course of the season. That would lead me to thinking that this could be a big Bruce Thornton game. He is this team's best offensive player, in my opinion. He's the one that runs the show. He will get you a decent amount of peripheral stats as well. I mean, just look, in each of the last 5 games, he's been over 9 combined rebounds and assists. That's really good for DraftKings scoring. Unfortunately, he is all the way up at $9,500 on DraftKings, but if Ohio State's going to score 75 points and he's going to get you 10 plus rebounds and assists, I could very well see him giving a good return and being a really solid play. I also like John Mobley Jr. He's a little more shot dependent than Bruce Thornton is. I think he's way overpriced, though. Like $8,200, I think he's way too much on DraftKings. If he were back in the 6K, 7K range, I'd be very intrigued to play him because Northwestern, they give up a ton of 3-point shots, and John Mobley is going to be the guy that's taking him for Ohio State. He's taken 7 or more in the last 7 games. So he's going to get a ton of looks from 3, but at $8,200, not doing a whole lot else outside of making those threes, it's just really tough to see him giving you a 4x or 5x value game. Now, the other, the technical usage leader for this Ohio State team over the course of the season has been Devin Royal. He's been a little boom or bust, but this very well could be a boom because Nick Martinelli is not a great defender, in my opinion, and this Northwestern team is not an overall great rebounding team. So I could see this being a good Devin Royal game, but like the profile is not as secure as like a Bruce Thornton. He's a little more boom or bust. He's got to stay out of foul trouble if you want to get a ceiling performance from Devin Royal. And then there's Micah Parrish, who's a really good rebounding guard. Much like with, I was just saying his name. Much like with Mobley, I'm a little bit rusty, y'all. Sorry. Much like with Mobley, he's overpriced for what he does. Like, he does have 2 games in his last 3. He was at 37 and 41 DraftKings points, but Ohio State was having injuries in those 2 games. He was having to play a little bit bigger, and I just don't see this being one of those type of games. So $7,400 for Micah Parrish is probably going to be a pass for me. I really do like Sean Stewart at $4,200, though. He's this team's best interior presence, like most consistent interior presence. He fouls a ton, though. Like in his last 5 games played, he's fouled out of 3 of them. But when he stays out of foul trouble, he can give you a game like he did against Michigan, 27 minutes and 25.5 fantasy points. And with Matthew Nicholson not being a certain not being like a certainly good offensive player, Sean Stewart might not have to foul him a whole lot. And so this could lead to a big minutes game from Sean Stewart. And I could see him being a very solid value play at $4,200. So he is going to make my player pool. All right, that is game number 1. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather and talk game number 2. Now, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off is the Twitter. You can follow me at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on Twitter. And I'm also putting out some threads on days where I do not have episodes as well. So if you're looking for more information, reach out on Twitter. I also tweet out all updates for the show as well. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description on the YouTube video as well as the audio feed to the Fantasy Corner Discord. Is 100% free. It is a community of a bunch of really good, really smart people who play DFS for a lot of different sports, and college basketball is one of them. The college basketball chat in there is one of the brightest group of DFS players that I know of, especially that play college basketball DFS. And we're just in there all day talking lineups, talking strategies, talking injury news. And it's just a great place to go if you're looking for people to talk DFS with, bounce ideas off of, or just have fun and sweat it out together. So Fantasy Corner Discord is the place to go. And then if you want to know who actually makes all my DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I have an article as well as my core plays for every single college basketball DFS slate. So you can get not only who I'm playing, but why I'm playing them, as well as some strategies and some thoughts about the slate in general. And I do think that it can help you get better at your DFS process. I'm never going to promise that you can just, plug in those core plays and print thousands of dollars. It's not that easy, but I do think I can help you get better at your process with the plays and the articles. All right. So now let's go ahead and talk about game number 2, which is a little bit higher total. It is USC traveling across the country to take on Maryland. Now, teams traveling across the country this season, especially in the Big Ten, have been notoriously bad. So I think this is a really good spot that Maryland might blow them out. KenPom has this game projected to be 83-72 in favor of Maryland. That is a game total of 155 points. Maryland is the highest projected team total on the slate, according to KenPom. From a statistical perspective, it's not hard to see why. USC ranks 132nd in the nation in tempo and 83rd in defensive efficiency. That is in the bottom half of the Big Ten. They are a poor rebounding team, and they are a poor interior defense, which might make it a long night for them. More on that in a second. And Maryland, on the other hand, they're going to play fast. They're 61st in the nation in tempo, which is surprising because they're so starting 5 heavy. They rank outside the top 300 in bench minutes, and they're also in the top 20 in defensive efficiency. They rank exactly 20th. So this Maryland team, they're going to give you a lot of possessions, but they're not going to give you a whole lot of scoring. They're also a great rebounding team, and they don't give up a whole lot of blocks or steals. So this Maryland team is generally not one that you're going to want to target guys against, especially in the front court. I believe there have only been 2 double-doubles in all of Big Ten conference play by a forward against Maryland. So this is not the spot to target your USC bigs. So like St. Thomas, as much as I played him all season long, as great as he's been, really, he hasn't been all that great lately. Probably not playing him against this Maryland front court. Just not doing it. I think it's quite likely that he's going to get in foul trouble. I think it's quite likely that he's going to struggle to get rebounds. He's not going to get a lot of blocks or steals. So I'm just not playing him against the Maryland front court. The other USC front court options, you've got Rashawn Ajee, who plays most of the minutes at center. He has some random ceiling games. He's only $4,000, but I don't think that this is the matchup to do that with. The starting center is Josh Cohen, but he generally gets yanked pretty quickly. You see last game, he started against Minnesota, but only played 9 minutes. He's only $3,300 though. So if you want to take a chance at maybe him staying out there on the floor more than 9 minutes, I think there's an argument to be made for that, but it's still not a good matchup. And then there's Matt Nolan, who's kind of a wild card. So Eric Musselman will have these days where he just randomly decides to play this 11th guy off the bench. And Matt Nolan has been one of those guys recently. He played 32 minutes against Northwestern, and in the last 2, he's played 16 and 15 minutes. So I think there's a chance Like the old Dumb and Dumber meme, so you're saying there's a chance. I think there's a chance Matt Nolan could play 15 minutes and get you 12 DraftKings points. But again, with this being such a tough matchup against the Maryland front court, even if he does play that many minutes, there's no guarantee he's going to get a lot of fantasy points. Now, for the rest of the USC guys, we've got Wesley Yates III, who's a really talented freshman that is starting to look like this team's best offensive player. In his last 3 games, he's gone for 42, 29, and 28 DraftKings points. And he's averaging 15 shots per game over that span. But I just don't think this Maryland defense is one you really want to target. And he's up to $8,400 on DraftKings now. So of those 3 great games that I just mentioned, only one of them has been above 4x value. And oh, by the way, he doesn't give a whole lot of rebounding and assists. So it's just really hard for me to advocate for playing Wesley Yates here on this slate. I think USC as a whole is probably going to be the team that I have the least exposure to out of anybody. But I do think that kind of the secondary guards might be a way you could target this team, though. So Desmond Claude started off the season as USC's like one of their best players, right? Had some huge performances, got hurt, is now back. Has played in the last 2 games and put up 30 and 18 DraftKings points. He is a guy who is going to put up a ton of peripheral stats. Like in that game where he had 30 DraftKings points, he only took 6 shots, right? So this is a guy who can get you DraftKings points in a hurry because of his ability to rebound and assist the ball. He has great rates in both those categories. He's going to play nearly the entire game, especially if he can stay out of foul trouble. So I think Desmond Claude is probably going to be my favorite piece on this USC side. And then you've got Chibuzo Agbo, who plays a ton, fouls a lot, but is very dependent on his 3-point shot. If it's hitting, he can give you a really good game. But the bad news is you look at the splits, he tends to hit at home, tends to not hit on the road. In his last 3 road games, he is a combined 1 for 10. It's not good. So really this USC team is almost going to be a full fade for me, with the exception of taking some shots at the cheap bigs and getting me a little bit of Desmond Claude at the guard position. Now on the Maryland side, you remember how I said interior defense is going to be a problem for USC? Yeah, it's because Maryland has one of the biggest front courts in the country, and they're both good at basketball, and they're both aggressive, and they both can go get you 50 DraftKings points on any given night. Derek Queen, aka the Blizzard, is the self-appointed nickname that I am giving him, and then Julian Reese, the little brother of Angel Reese. So let's talk about both of them. So Derek Queen is a guy that against Iowa, he only needed 31 minutes, only needed 9 field goal attempts to put up 34 DraftKings points. And he didn't even have a blocker steal in that game. It's because he went for 18 and 13. He's just a really good rebounder. He's a really high usage offensive player, and he really gets to the foul line a lot. In each of his last 5 games, he's attempted at least 6 free throws. That's pretty substantial, right? And then he did show you the ceiling back against Rutgers when he put up 60 DraftKings points. Now, here's what I will say about Derek Queen, though. Derek Queen's ceiling games come when Julian Reese gets in foul trouble. Julian Reese is a better rebounder and better shot blocker than Derek Queen, but Julian Reese's game log has significantly more peaks and valleys than Derek Queen because Reese is significantly more prone to getting in foul trouble. In this game in particular, I think it makes more sense to play Derek Queen, but I've had these guys wrong time and time again. The Rutgers game, I had so much more Julian Reese than Derek Queen, and Reese goes for 10 because he's in foul trouble, and meanwhile Queen just goes off. Like I get these guys wrong all the time. So if in my mind it makes more sense to play Queen, maybe it's going to end up being Reese just for that reason. And so I'm going to be getting exposure to both of them. Can you play a lineup with both of them? I think in cash games you can. I think you can say like, hey, I'm going to play both of these guys, and I'm going to eat up like $19,000 salary, and I'm going to get like 50 DraftKings points. No, that wouldn't be good math. Hold on. I'm going to get like 80 DraftKings points between the two of them. I think that's something you could do, but I do think that, like I said, the ceiling performances from one come from the other being in foul trouble. So I think if you're playing GPPs, it probably makes sense to just play one of them, but I do think it's quite likely that both of them have a good game against this weak USC frontcourt. Now, for the guards from Maryland, like I said, they're supremely starting 5 heavy. They're really only going to play Gillespie, Rice, and Miguel. Gillespie is the engine that makes the offense go. He's got a great assist rate. He can get you some rebounds as well. And he generally takes double-digit shots, and when he's hitting is when he gives you the big DraftKings performances because the rebounds and assists are going to be there no matter what. And that's what you saw against Iowa when he was 11 for 14 from the field, 49 DraftKings points. I think he's slightly overpriced, but like this Maryland team is the highest projected scoring team on the slate. This is the lead guard of that offense, the lead assist guy in that offense. So I think it's quite likely that if you're looking to stack up the Maryland's side or play multiple Terrapins, Gillespie, it makes a lot of sense to have him as one of those. And then you have the two wings, Rice and Miguel. So I have, like, all season long been a Miguel over Rice guy. And the main reason why is because they have similar profiles, similar usage rates, similar shooting percentages, similar rebound assist rates. They're quite similar profiles, right? Except for the fact that Miguel is $900 cheaper on DraftKings. So if they're going to have similar profiles, why would I not play the cheaper guy? Right. And so, especially with Miguel, you look at what he's done at home in his last two home games. He's a combined 10 for 18 from three. It's pretty good. His last three games in general, 25, 29, 31 DraftKings points. Whereas Rice, still pretty good, 25, 18, 27 DraftKings points. So I'm a little more interested in Miguel. But like I said, I think there's an argument to be made for both of them, with this being the highest scoring team on the slate, with these being two guys that are going to play 30-plus minutes and are going to get double-digit shots. I think both of them are going to make my player pool, but I will continue to be a Miguel over Rice guy, especially in this game environment. All right, game number 3 on the night is a battle in the American Athletic between Wichita State and FAU. KenPom has this one projected to be FAU 81-76. That is a game total of 157 points. That is the highest game total on the slate, making FAU the second highest team total on the slate, with Wichita State coming in third place. So this is a really juicy game environment, especially when you look at the different ways you can attack this game, right? So first off, let's talk tempo. Wichita State is 91st in the nation in tempo. They're not a good defensive team either. They're 126th in defensive efficiency. FAU is 56th in tempo, 194th in defensive efficiency. So these are the two worst defensive teams on the slate by a wide margin, and they're two of the three fastest teams on the slate. By pretty wide margin there too. So this is really the game environment that you're going to want to look at, in my opinion, if you're looking to set up a game stack. The bad news is, though, is that Wichita is not a great offensive team. They are a very poor shooting team, but they're a very good rebounding team. What's weird, though, is that if there were ever a night for them to have a good shooting night, it would be against FAU, because FAU has one of the worst three-point defenses in the country. So maybe this would be a night where Wichita might actually look like a good shooting team. Now, let's talk about this Wichita team, though. So they have played without guard Justin Hill for the last 3 games. He hasn't played in the month of February, right? And in those 3 games, you start to notice some patterns. So the first thing they did was they moved Xavier Bell from first man off the bench, 6th man, to lead guard offensively, right? And what he's done in the last 3 games, 36 DraftKings points against USF, 25 against UTSA, and then only 14 against Memphis, when a ton of people were on him. But it's easy to see why. He was in foul trouble. He had 4 fouls in that game. So I really do think that if Xavier Bell stays out of foul trouble in this one, stays on the floor, he's going to give you another 25-plus DraftKings point performance, as long as Justin Hill is out. If Justin Hill is back in, then throw all that out the window. But as long as Hill continues to be out, I really like Xavier Bell, and I think he's going to be one of the top plays of the slate overall from a points per dollar perspective if Justin Hill continues to be out. Now, for the other guard spots, Hartland Beverly comes off the bench, but in the last 3 games, he's played a ton of minutes, 25, 31, and 35. The DraftKings points have been quite volatile, though, 8, 33, and 26. But this is a guy that will put up peripheral stats, so as long as he's out there on the floor, he can give you a ton of production. So $4,900, I think he's a very boomer bust value play that you can get to. And then the other guard I got to talk about is Bijan Cortez. He's an Oklahoma transfer. So the Memphis game was his ceiling game. 31 DraftKings points is the most he's had all season. 15 shots is the most he's attempted this season by far. It was actually his first double-digit shot attempt game of the season. But the big reason why is because A, they were down Justin Hill, and B, Xavier Bell got in foul trouble. So, like, if you're going to be going to Bijan Cortez, don't play him in a lineup with Xavier Bell. Don't play him in a lineup with Harlan Beverly. He's going to need those guys to be in foul trouble or off the floor in order to deliver value. And I just don't see that being a super likely scenario again. So I'm probably not going to be chasing that big game from Cortez. I'm going to be going with what the numbers in my eyes trust me, that Xavier Bell is the better, more efficient player when he can stay out of foul trouble, and he doesn't foul a whole lot. So I think he's going to be out there quite a bit. All right. So those are really the only guards you have to worry about. McGinnis plays a little bit off the bench, but I mean, maybe if you're playing a deep GPP, you could take a shot at him, but probably not for me. Now, the forwards, here's what they've done. They play pretty much just 3 forwards, right? And they all three start now. The first is Corey Washington. He's kind of more of a wing than a big man. He's a transfer from St. Peter's, but he attacks the offensive glass with a ferocity unlike very few people have in college basketball. In the Memphis game, he was able to come up with 18 points, 15 boards, 39 DraftKings points. That's after putting up 40 DraftKings points against UTSA. You remember how I said Wichita's a poor shooting team? Well, they miss a lot of shots. Corey Washington rebounds a lot of them. He's a really good offensive rebounder. So I think that this is not a bad spot for him. They cheapen his price tag a little bit on DraftKings. $800 is still a lot to pay for a guy who's primarily just an offensive rebounder, but he's going to play a ton of minutes. They're probably going to continue to miss shots. And so I think he's a very reasonable play at $8,800, especially if you're looking at game stack this game and you think this one has a ton of possessions. Quincy Ballard is their more traditional big man center, right? And the story with Ballard, since he's been at Wichita State, has been when he gets the big minutes, he gets the big DraftKings points. And in 4 of the last 5 games he's played north of 30 minutes, and he's been over 28 DraftKings points in all 4 of those games. So if he's going to continue to play big minutes, he's going to continue to have big production, especially against a team like FAU that doesn't play a traditional center for a whole lot of minutes. More on them in a second. So I do think this is a pretty good spot for Quincy Ballard. If I had to pick one of the forwards on Wichita, though, it's going to be Ronnie DeGray III. He's kind of a small ball power forward built in the mold of like a Carlos Boozer type, I guess you could compare him to. Even though Boozer wasn't really small ball because he wasn't really a shooter, but like he's not like a big power forward. He's kind of on the smaller sides for power forwards, right? But he's not a shot dependent player either. He's going to play a ton of minutes. He's played at least 28 minutes in each of the last 4 games. And he's going to be out there getting a lot of rebounds, getting you some peripheral stats and scoring a little bit as well. He's at $4,600 on DraftKings. He's been at 24 DraftKings points in 2 of the last 3 games. So I think this is a pretty good spot to go back to DeGray. He was moved into the starting lineup when Justin Hill got injured. And so if Hill continues to be out, which is kind of like the caveat to all this, right, then DeGray is going to continue to be one of the best value plays on the slate. If Hill's back, you can throw a lot of what I said out the window because a lot of these guys are going to be considerably worse points per dollar plays if Hill is back in the lineup, taking up minutes, taking up shots, taking up peripheral stats. So if Hill's back, I think Hill actually makes a lot of sense as a play. But if Hill's out, there's a lot of Wichita guys that you can get to, especially with them being one of the higher scoring teams projected on the slate. Now, on the FAU side, they're kind of frustrating from a DraftKings perspective. They're not like full-blown Michigan State playing 10 guys 20 minutes apiece, but they play 8 guys. All 8 of them are going to play probably around 25-ish minutes, except for one of them. And you never know which one of the 8's going to go off. But the good news is, from a DraftKings perspective, they're all kind of affordable, right? So let's start with the guards. So they're going to play 4 guards. It's going to be Leland Walker, Ken Evans, and Kai Tandy that start, and then Nicolo Moretti is going to come off the bench. Leland Walker is like the most, what's the word I'm looking here? I'm trying to think the best way to word this. He has the best profile. He has the best usage rate. He has the best production when you look back near the start of the season. But recently in conference play, he's playing between 22 and 26 minutes, which is inhibiting him from getting ceiling games because he's not playing max minutes. But the usage and the historical production indicate that he should be the best one and he should be playing more minutes. He's just not. The second guard that starts is Kai Tandy. He's a little bit more of a cardio guy. He doesn't play with a high usage rate, but he will randomly have these high ceiling games. Last year, he played at Jacksonville State, I believe, and he had a lot of big games at Jacksonville State. I do believe I have the team right there. It was one of those mid-major teams that's in the southern part of the United States. They wear red. I'm pretty sure it's Jacksonville State, and I'm pretty sure he was pretty good there. So I think he's actually like a guy that could randomly have a ceiling game, but for the most part, he's kind of just a big cardio guy. And then there's also Ken Evans Jr. that starts. He plays the most minutes out of all the guards, but he doesn't have a supremely high usage rate. But in a game like this one that's going to get up and down and feature a ton of possessions, I kind of think just being out there on the floor is worth something. And so he might be worth a look at $5,100. And then Nicolo Moretti is the guard off the bench, where it's just like you kind of combine a lot of what I just said and you get his profile. Like he is second among them in usage, second among them in minutes. In terms of production, he can have some ceiling games. He's been over 23 DraftKings points in 3 of the last 4, but he does come off the bench. He very rarely plays more than 28 minutes. He very rarely takes double-digit shots. It's like with all these guards, it's like their ceiling is capped by each other. If we ever have a game where like one or two of them is in foul trouble, the other two should just go to the moon, like if we're being honest. Now at the forward spot, they play a non-traditional center in Trey Carroll. He's only about 6'7", but he's an energizer bunny. He plays very hard and he can really jump. He is a very productive fantasy points per minute player, which is good because he generally does not play a lot of minutes. He hasn't played more than 28 minutes in the last 6 games, but he can produce with that limited minute total because of the incredible high usage rate he plays at. Very good rebounder, will block you a lot of shots as well. So I really do like the prospects of playing him in this game environment at $6,800 because that 23 minutes, like, it's kind of like the inverse of what I just said for Ken Evans. Like the 23 minutes in this game is going to be more possessions than 23 minutes in any other game. And he's shown the ability to hit value with 23 minutes in those games. So I really do think Trey Carroll is worth a look at $6,800. I think the consensus on paper best play on this FAU team, though, is Baba Miller. He's a transfer from Florida State. He is a long, rangy power forward that can shoot. And you look at his game log, 3 of the last 5, he's been over 35 DraftKings points. He's this team's best player. If he's not in foul trouble, he plays the most minutes. If the game's not a blowout, he plays the most minutes. So I do think that this is a really good spot to go back to Baba Miller. He's probably going to be the FAU owl that I'm going to have the most exposure to, especially considering, like I said, they're projected to score 81 points. So if you get somebody to get a big slice of that pie, then it's going to be a lot of DraftKings points, right? The other forwards that they play, there is Caleb Glenn. He comes off the bench and he's been great in his last 2 games, 31 and 27 DraftKings points. I can't really nail in some numbers as to why he's been great. But the minutes have been slightly above his average. The production has been well above his average. I don't know why, but at $5,400, I think there's a lot of people that are going to play him as a value play. I probably wouldn't play him with Carroll because I think those two guys kind of inhibit each other a little bit because they're kind of playing similar roles. And then their true center that comes off the bench is Vokiaitis. But with Carroll producing a lot lately, with Glenn producing a lot lately, Vokiaitis has seen his minutes go down dramatically from where it was at the start of the season. But he is a really good fantasy point per minute producer. So every now and then he'll have games like he did against Temple where it was 15 minutes but 23 DraftKings points. But that's like the absolute ceiling. At $5,200, we really want more than that. So he's probably going to be the least likely FAU forward that I'm going to play. All right, but that's going to do it for all 3 games, y'all. So hopefully gave you guys all the information that you need to build some winning DraftKings lineups, some winning FanDuel lineups, or some, some player props or some parlays here for this 3-game slate. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton when you guys do so on YouTube. I cannot stress that enough. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of the college basketball season, as well as all of our golf content that's coming out weekly as well. But that's going to do it for this episode, y'all. Reminder, if you do want more from me, follow me on Twitter, join the Fantasy Corner Discord, join the Patreon if you want access to those core plays. And then also check out all my other content. It's on drroto.com. I'm writing some college basketball content for them right now. Very stoked to be doing that. We got the power rankings that are coming out weekly. We got the upset watch that's coming out weekly, and a lot more that's going to be coming your way when we get closer to the NCAA tournament. So check out drroto.com as well. But that is going to do it for this episode, y'all. Like I said, I'm really excited about this Thursday night slate. I think this is a really solid 3-game slate. It's not like a greasy, disgusting 3-game slate like all the ones we've seen in the last few weeks. Really stoked about this one. I think there's going to be a lot of DraftKings scoring, and there's a lot of options for building lineups with what we were talking about with those different Wichita and FAU guys there at the end, and some of the either ors on Maryland. So best of luck to you guys here on this Thursday night slate. I hope to be back recording for the Friday night slate as well. But thank you guys for watching and listening to this point. Best of luck to you guys on Thursday, and I will see you guys next time.